Hey everybody, CVH here, and in today's video we're going to be doing another Budget-ify video on one of the pre-constructed decks that came out with Heroes of Skyrim. And today we're going to be looking at the Ancano's Cunning starter deck, as you can see in front of us here. In this series, we like to take established archetypes and make them more budget-friendly to make by removing all of the epics and legendaries, as well as cards from expansions you need to purchase with money or gold to get the cards from, such as the Madhouse Collection and Fall of the Dark Brotherhood, and we replace them with commons and rares from the core set and Heroes of Skyrim. But obviously today we're going to be taking a look at this deck, which does already come with a handful of epics and legendaries, and including Ancano here, which is the deck's namesake. And we're going to be basically trying to edit this deck to make it more consistent while remaining within the restraints of the Budget-ify series that we've placed upon ourselves. So let's buy the deck and get to some replacements. So this pre-constructed deck, like many of the pre-constructed decks, could get more aggressive or it could get more defensive, depending on where you wanted to take it in the future. It could turn into a control deck, could turn into more of an aggressive sort of mid-rangey deck. There are mid-range mages out there, there are control mages out there, both are fairly successful. But for today's video, since we will be trying to edit this and make it more consistent in the context of the Budget-ify videos, where we're only using commons and rares, that will make it a bit tough to go for a dedicated control strategy, so I'll probably be removing some of the more gimmicky cards and control-oriented cards and trying to give this deck a more consistent early curve. As you can see here, it's spread a little bit thin, it goes a bit more to the late game, but I will be trying to replace some of the actions with creatures basically and give this deck more of an ability to pressure in the early turns. Right off the bat, we can cut the 2 copies of Calm and the 2 copies of Night to Remember. Night to Remember is here in the deck with Dark Rebirth and Winterhold Illusionist to take advantage of our summon effects. Being that this isn't a dedicated control deck and specifically doesn't have access to a card like Manticore for the late game, here you go, here's Manticore here. Its basically only good target in the deck is going to be Conjuration Scholar. And that's a pretty good card to be targeting with these cards, but we have way more than we would need as far as cards that, reuse summon effects in this deck. So Night to Remember seems like the worst one for me if we're going to be making this deck a bit more aggressive. And Calm essentially is functioning as copies 2 and 3 of Cloudrest Illusionist. We should definitely be playing 3 copies of Cloudrest if we have them in this deck, but we don't, so we're just going to be taking out the Calms here. I'm also going to be cutting Crystal Tower Crafters. It is a more aggressive or aggressively oriented card. This card did see a lot of play in the Action Mage and Action Assassin decks of olden days, but when Crystal Tower Crafter was nerfed to a 1/1 from a 2/2, it saw a significant decrease in play for good reason. This card just does not get the job done anymore, so we will be cutting it. I already mentioned the Night to Remember. Dark Rebirth, yet again, kind of a slow, control-oriented card. I have played these to some success in control mage decks. In a more aggressive deck, I just don't really think it fits, so I'll be cutting these and replacing these with some more consistent creatures. And the same with Mage's Trick. This card has seen a good amount of play in control mage as well, but if we are an aggressive deck, I would even include a card like Crushing Blow over Mage's Trick in this deck, just because it can push more face damage. We're not really going for the value option of dealing a damage and gaining a life and drawing 1 card. Crushing Blow is just more effective if we need the damage. I won't be putting in Crushing Blows in this version, but I just wanted to highlight it as a better card for what we're trying to do with the deck than Mage's Trick, which is a good control option. The last 3 cards I'm going to be cutting are just not great cards in general. One could actually call one of them bad. Mage's Guild Retreat I'm just going to be cutting here. It's a very, very slow and clunky card, which will very, very rarely give you any sort of benefit whatsoever, even in a deck with a good amount of actions. We are cutting some of the actions for creatures. Even in a deck with a bunch of actions, I do not recommend Mage's Guild Retreat. Stay far away from this card. Paying 7 for a support is usually not going to pay off, especially if that card's name is Mage's Guild Retreat and not something like Rothgar Forge or something like that. The last 2 cards I'm going to be cutting are Insightful Scholars. Don't like this card too much. I think there are better ways to draw cards. Just kind of an inefficient card. Arena playable at best in my opinion. The value's just not really there, especially because we're trying to make this deck a bit more aggressive, and this card does not have great stats. If we are focusing more on the stats and the ability to maybe play other things, if you wanted, you could replace this card with Fate Weaver. I think Fate Weaver is a relatively similar card, but way more in line with what this deck wants to be doing, at least the way we are editing it. But I think just for this version, I am just going to be cutting the Insightful Scholars for other cards in general. Alright, let's get to some replacements. I mentioned some early turns that we needed to shore up and make a little bit more consistent, and we're going to start by doing that with 3 copies of Crown Quartermaster. Just a great 1-drop if we're going to be getting aggressive. 1 cost, 2/1 can allow us to pressure a bit, getting that Steel Dagger for some versatility later, and it also trades up with a lot of 2-drops, which is nice. Speaking of 2-drops, there are 3 in this deck that I think are pretty good. The Ruma Profiteer, Shrieking Harpy, and Wordcrafter. Unfortunately, only 2 copies of each are in the deck currently, so I will be including the 3rd copy of each of them, just for consistency's sake. Ruma Profiteer is a good offensive tool that can also allow us to heal against other aggressive decks, and Harpy and Wordcrafter are just rather nuts. Harpy's one of the best prophecies in the game, Wordcrafter one of the best turn 2 plays, and it does have a lot of viability later. It can give word to other things that might need a trade to keep our board resilient. Just really, really powerful twos. We also have the High Rock Summoner. I'm going to leave it in for now. I don't think it needs to be in here by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a reasonable enough card. We can use the Winterhold Illusionist on it still. And this card is actually a little bit better too for an aggressive deck. Didn't mention this, but it can, unlike Dark Rebirth, bypass opposing guards by removing them from the board, allowing us to attack through that lane if there is a troublesome guard in our way. But we can also reuse High Rock Summoner's summon effect to get an additional Atronach. Not an amazing card, but could give us a little bit of extra mid-game push in a Budget-ify version of this deck. Alright, I was actually back and forth on this decision when I was thinking about how many things to cut in this deck. I am actually going to get rid of the 1 copy of Praetorian Commander. I don't want to give the wrong impression. This card isn't completely trash right now. It is significantly worse than it was when it gave every creature in your deck +2/+2, but I was just debating leaving it in just because it's one more thing we can use the Illusionist with, but removing it gives us 9 extra slots, which we can use to put in 3 play sets of new cards. And I'm going to be doing that with 3 copies of Hive Defender, 3 copies of Golden Saint, and 3 copies of Morthal Executioner. Morthal Executioner is a great card when it comes to pressuring the opponent. I mention this card a lot in Arena because it can just sort of snowball and win the game by itself. Hive Defender is one of the best, if not the best, 4-cost creatures in the game. This card should just be in the deck because of its crazy stats, good offensively and good defensively. And Golden Saint I mentioned in a lot of other Budget-ify decks, I believe. It's just, one of the better 6-drops we could be playing. In conjunction with the Conjuration Scholar, this gives this deck a pretty impressive turn 5 with the Ring or turn 6, and both of those cards are pretty good with the Winterhold Illusionist. Even using the Illusionist on Golden Saint is going to give us an additional 4/4 guard, so that should allow this deck to pressure. Before we get into a little bit of games and casual, I would like to talk a little bit about some cards you could be playing if you do have access to them. The way we've Budget-ified this deck is more similar to a mid-range mage deck, so I definitely recommend checking out some lists online, maybe some videos on this channel even. I think we've Budget-ified similar decks as well. So, just aggressive mage options, but if you wanted to take the starter deck and then eventually turn into something more control-oriented, you would need to pick up that great control mage late game with the Dawn's Wraths, Manticoras, Marak, Odaving. You already have the Ancano, so that's one piece out of the way, but, Ice Storms, multiple copies would be required at that point. That would be a lot more expensive. We already mentioned Cloudrest Illusionist would be great offensively and defensively. For other early plays, Daggerfall Mage comes to mind as an amazing early turn play for whether or not you want to go more aggressively, whether or not you want to go more defensively. It's just a great card overall. And there are a lot of great 3-drops we could be playing as well in Willpower. East March Crusader is a fantastic card draw. Might actually be better than Cunning Ally. I just don't want to edit this deck too much from its original state. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with changes, but given that we only have 27 intelligence cards in the deck, East March Crusader is probably a better option. Just didn't want to change it too much. Dawnstar Healer is an amazing card as well if you do have access to this epic. It's a great way to gain life against other aggressive decks. Hoffinger Marauder is my go-to pressuring tool on turn 5 in Willpower currently for my mid-range mage decks. I definitely think that something like that is better than the more gimmicky Winterhold Illusionist, but for the purposes of this video, this is the deck we're going to be playing, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the replacements and enjoy some gameplay with it in casual. And as always, if you do, feel free to leave a like, stay subscribed to the channel for more Legends content, follow my stream in the description. I'll see you guys next time. Alright, so we have a Battle Mage, typically aggressive. I feel like I say that a lot in the Budget-ify videos. We might end up facing a lot of Battle Mages. We could even make the case to keep the Harpy in that case, but I think I'm just going to ship it. It's a fine prophecy, could be better later on. Got the High Rock and the Morthal. Hopefully that's a reasonable enough start. Hopefully if he plays a creature, it has only 1 health. Definitely don't think keeping Harpy would be that bad either.
I ride like the wind. Well met, marsh friend.
It's as if he knew. Get another 6 cost. Usually this is the best one to get, but if we're up against a super aggro deck, maybe we'd rather have the 5/5 guard. Oh, Jesus. Alright, so we can answer that next turn with the Lightning Bolt. The Prophecy Piercing Javelin. So good, man. Dawnstar Healer in this matchup would be amazing to turn the life point discrepancy around. Because we can build up a forest, keep him at like 27, 26-ish, and then set up for a big Dawnstar Healer. That's a lot of the ways these mid-range mages typically come back into the game against a more aggressive deck. And he is dealing a lot of damage. We have the Ice Storm, but it's a little bit off still. Could get the Bruma Profiteer going, or we could play Lightning Bolt, or we could also play Mortal Executioner and Steel Dagger and actually start growing it a bit. That is scary though. For more than one reason, because we're also giving him cards here, and he looks like a pretty traditional, well, I mean it's definitely an aggro battle mage, but I don't know if he's playing that many prophecies. The Sharpshooter Scouts make me think he is, but that's really the only prophecy we've seen so far. I think I'm just going to take it safe and go for a Lightning Bolt on the 4-2 just to get out of there. Would rather have used a Firebolt there, obviously. Play Morthal with it or something. Next turn we can go Bruma Profiteer Morthal. And we're only letting him play whatever he draws here.
This should be good.
It's 8 damage on board. We're just a bit off of Ice Storm, although that'd be great this turn. Let's go for Bruma and Cunning Ally. Better than Morthal here if we're trying to be defensive. We do whiff, unfortunately. Again, not an amazing card in the way we've built the deck with the Budget-ify replacements, but you could make it better, and you could also take out this card for a card like Dawnstar, which would be better here. East March Crusader, better in other matchups, not so much this one, really. That could be helpful. Hopefully he doesn't just put too much pressure on the board. That's not really too much, honestly. I think we can maybe come back from that. I think I actually try to keep both Brumas safe for more turns, and I Firebolt this one. I could also just Firebolt and execute this turn. Yeah, I think that's reasonable too. A lot of different ways we could play this, actually. Let's go for the super defensive board clear play. Still want a bit in the field lane.
There's a plan. There's always a plan.
By killing the Elite, it's not the value trade, but it does make it a little easier for him to kill this by putting it in the field lane, but he'd still have to draw damage, use the extra damage on the Sharpshooter, and trade with my 3-2. So hopefully we can come back with these. They're not as good as Dawnstar Healer by themselves. Dawnstar Healer on this board, we'd gain like 6 life immediately, plus the heal from the Brumas if we could play that. Looks like he's just going to go face here, which is good news for us, I think. Oh, definitely. So we can play Hive Defender and Morthal here, and gain 4 life overall. At that point, though, I think I'm going to not attack quite yet, even though we're getting the Morthal on board. I think we can wait just a bit longer. But it looks like we can turn this one back around. He's not making it easy. He's thinking about clearing the Morthal, I think? Or maybe one of the Brumas? That'd be kinda nuts. Fire. He agrees. Well, playing a single guard isn't that good. I think I'm just gonna double trade into that. This is the critical turn here because I'm only gonna be able to heal up to 4 no matter what I do. So I have to just hope that he doesn't top deck a Lightning Bolt or an Underworld Vigilante. If we get one more set of heals off the Brumas this turn, that'd be a different story, but we are dead to a couple top decks even with nothing on his board right now. That is one of them. Jeez, what a beating.
Time to fight. Talos. Time to fight. It has been engaging.
Close. Next turn we could have played Hive Defender and Winterhold Illusionist heal for another 4 and give that other Hive Defender guard again. So I think if we had lived that one turn, we would have won that game. With this hand, I think we can keep the Ward Crafter and ship the other 2. Could use the Harpy, though, if he's in a more aggressive Monk deck with Goblin Skulks. So based on him having the ring, I'm going to keep the Harpy here, because he could ring out a Goblin Skulker during Cutburst or something. Depending on what kind of deck this actually turns out to be. Would be nice to also stay ahead in life, because we have the Golden Saint now. Just gonna start off with the Word Crafter. Pushes more damage than High Rock.
Careful there, friend.
With the Gourmet 2 for some easy removal. Not doing anything, so I guess we can just play High Rock here.
My friend would like to say hello.
And we get the Frost, which is nice. Doesn't compete with our turn 6 play already. Munda Stone, that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting like a Hive Defender, which would have been pretty annoying, so I'm not sad about it, definitely. Alright, let's go for Morthal, and if I didn't have Morthal, I don't know if I'd be making that attack for 1 to break that rune, but here we are. And our board is looking impressive. So hopefully Munda Stone doesn't do terrible things to us this game. I am okay with that. Honestly though, it's a Thieves Guild, so I'm kind of okay with whatever it gets because we have Gourmet and Execute. If we needed to play them. I'd much rather just play Frost Atronach this turn. Do have to deal with that though. Oh, what?
That was my mistake.
We'll just pretend it didn't get charge.
Your blood will spill.
Alright, let's play another one.
Farewell, fool.
Well, that's what the situation would be if it had gotten anything but charge, so we can just pretend it didn't get charge. I think we can all admit to have done that at least once. At least I can. And Dying Dragon. That'd be a beating if it got charged too. Ward is annoying, but I have Harpy just to shackle it a bit longer. I also have a lot of damage this turn. Just a ton of damage.
Farewell, fool. Farewell, fool.
Yeah, and I definitely think we've got this one. That's what I'm talking about when I say Morthal Executioner just kind of snowballs and gets out of control too. That Astra with charge would have been kind of an issue, but realistically that's not going to happen too much. But I do think we are favored regardless. We would have had powerful plays like Golden Saint and the Frost Atronach anyway. But here,
My mistake.
I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. I don't want to seem like I'm DMing. Alright, so a very fast, well not a super fast loss, but we really almost came back in that loss. And a very quick win as well. So hopefully you enjoyed some gameplay of this Budget-ify and Ancano's Cunning deck. I'll see you guys next time.